Good morning, students. So, in this session, we'll discuss the topic environmental issues. Okay, we'll have a brief synopsis based on this chapter, environmental issues. So, in this chapter, you have studied certain important things like air pollution and its control, water pollution and its control, solid waste, agrochemicals and their effects, radioactive waste, greenhouse effect, ozone depletion, degradation by improper resource utilization, maintenance, and lastly, deforestation. So, these are the contents of this chapter, students. Okay, now let us discuss them one by one in brief. Okay, so we all know that pollution is what is the main cause for pollution? It is nothing but the growing human population. Human population size has grown enormously over the last 100 years, and that means there is a demand, okay, for various items like food, water, electricity, roads, etc. And these demands will exert tremendous pressure on natural resources and hence contribute to different types of pollution. Okay, so when you talk about pollution, actually what is the meaning of the pollution? Pollution is derived from a Latin word pollute, which means to defile, or in other words, you can say it can be defined as any undesirable change in physical, chemical, or biological characteristics of air, land, water, or soil. Okay, or you can define in different ways. It can be defined also as contamination of air, water, or soil by substances that are harmful to living organisms. Okay, so in order to control this, the government of India has passed the Environment Protection Act in the year 1986 to protect and improve the quality of our environment, which includes air, water, soil, etc. Now when you come to air pollution and its control, okay, so we depend on air for basically respiratory needs. Okay, and air pollutants cause different types of effects like injury to all living organisms. They are also known to reduce the growth and yield of crops. They cause premature death of plants, and they also deleteriously affect the respiratory system of humans and even animals. And harmful effects depend on the concentration of pollutants, duration of exposure and the different organism. Okay, so there are several ways actually of to remove the particulate matter. One of the most commonly or widely used ways is usage of electrostatic precipitator. Okay, so you can see the like picture here in this particular slide of electrostatic precipitator. So what is this precipitator? It can remove nearly about 99% particulate matter which is present in the exhaust from a thermal power plant. Okay, so how does it work? It has electrode wires that are maintained at several thousand volts, which produce a corona that releases actually, okay, that releases electrons, and these electrons will be attaching to the dust particles, giving them a net negative charge. Children, you can see in this particular diagram. Okay, right? And the velocity, one important thing that should be taken care is velocity of air between the plates must be low enough, and that should allow the dust to fall. Okay, so in this way it works. Now we have one more thing here, that is scrubber, which is also mentioned in your syllabus. What is this scrubber? A scrubber can remove gases like sulfur dioxide. Basically, the main purpose is removal of sulfur dioxide gas. In a scrubber, actually the exhaust will be passing through a spray of water or lime. Okay, and how does it work is you can see here in this particular diagram. Okay, a spray of water or lime is used here, and dirty air is allowed to pass, and when it cleans, clean air can be collected from this point. So this is how it works. Okay, and another important thing here is uh, according to CPCB, that is Central Pollution Control Board, particulate size of 2.5 micrometer or less in diameter is responsible for causing the greatest harm to human health. How does it do that? These fine particulates can be inhaled deep into the lungs and can cause breathing and respiratory symptoms. Okay, and irritation, even leading to inflammations and damage to the lungs and even premature deaths. So this is how the effect of particulate matter of size 2.5 micrometer or less in diameter. Okay, there are different causes for air pollution. As we all know, automobiles are a major cause for atmospheric pollution. Okay, particularly in the metro cities. Okay, and as we know, the number of vehicle increase on the streets, definitely the level of pollution is increasing, and the problem is shifting to other cities also. Okay, and the proper maintenance of automobiles along with use of lead free petrol or diesel can reduce the pollutants. Okay, and to control this, we have one simple option available, that is usage of catalytic converters. What are these catalytic converters? They have expensive metals known as namely platinum, palladium and rhodium, which work as catalysts, which are fitted into the automobiles for reducing the emission of poisonous gases. Okay, so how do these works actually, children? is as the exhaust passes through the catalytic converter, unburned hydrocarbons are converted into carbon dioxide and water, and carbon monoxide and nitric oxide are changed into carbon dioxide and nitrogen gas respectively. Okay, and you should also remember motor vehicles which will be equipped with this catalytic converter should use unleaded petrol, because lead in the petrol will be inactivating the catalyst. Very important point here. Okay, now in under air pollution, that is in India, basically the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, which came into existence in 1981, but there was an amendment made to it in the year 1987 to include noise also as an air pollutant. Okay, so what is basically noise? Noise is nothing but any undesirable or undesired high level of sound. Okay, and there are many different occasions where that lead to increased noise pollution. Okay, and there are many functions. Okay, and it depends on the nature of the city. The bigger the city, the bigger will be the level of noise pollution, or the higher will be the level of noise pollution. And brief exposure to extremely high sound levels, say for example 150 decibel or more, generated by takeoff of a jet plane or rocket, can even damage eardrums and thus permanently impairing the hearing ability of a person. Okay, so there are noise causes various effects. Okay, as we all know, like sleeplessness is one, increased heartbeat, altered breathing pattern. Okay, and even considerably bringing about stress levels in human beings. Okay, and how you are going to do that is many stringent laws are to be regulated. Okay, laws are to be laid down, stringent following laws which are laid down in relation to noise, like delimitation of horn free zones, particularly around hospitals and schools, permissible sound levels, okay, of crackers and of loudspeakers, and even timings for during which loudspeakers cannot be played, etc. These are to be enforced or brought into action to for proper maintenance of noise, or proper maintenance, or what do you say, protection from noise pollution. Okay, now we have the first case study in this chapter. You have studied multiple case studies. If you just recall, the first case study is related to controlling vehicular air pollution, and this case study is for the city of Delhi. Okay, so what has happened is in the year 1990, Delhi ranked fourth among the 41 most polluted cities of the world. And air pollution problems in Delhi, they were so serious that a PIL was filed in the Supreme Court. Okay, PIL, public interest litigation, was filed in the Supreme Court of India. And after being censured very strongly, the Supreme Court gave the directions to the government there. Okay, within, and those directions included that within a specified period of time, proper or appropriate measures should be taken, okay, to bring the pollution under control. Okay, and these included switching over the entire fleet of public transport of buses, okay, particularly from diesel to usage of CNG, that is compressed natural gas. Okay, so all the buses of Delhi were converted to run on CNG by the end of 2002 actually. Okay, and now the question arises, why actually CNG is better than diesel? There are multiple reasons for that. CNG burns more efficiently and very little of it is left unburned. Okay, CNG is cheaper than petrol or diesel, cannot be siphoned off, cannot be adulterated like petrol or diesel. Okay, and there was one major problem while switching over to the CNG, and that is the difficulty of laying down pipelines to deliver CNG through distribution points, pumps, ensuring uninterrupted supply. That was one major problem. But however, the steps were taken. Okay, multiple steps were taken to reduce vehicular pollution, and those included phasing out of old vehicles, use of unleaded petrol, use of low sulfur petrol and diesel, catalytic converters in vehicles, application of stringent pollution level norms of vehicles, etc. So these stringent steps were taken, and hence the pollution was brought under control. Okay, and the government of India, through a new auto fuel policy, actually, okay, has laid down a roadmap to cut down vehicular pollution in various Indian cities. Okay, stringent norms of for fuels means steadily reducing the sulfur and aromatic content in petrol and diesel fuels, which is very very important. And for that, Euro 2 norms, for example, stipulate that sulfur should be controlled at 350 parts per million, okay, in diesel, and 150 ppm in petrol. This is very important. Whereas aromatic hydrocarbon are to be contained at 42% of the concerned fuel. Okay, so these all, like measures or norms were followed stringently in order to bring pollution under control. And corresponding to the fuel, vehicle engine will also need to be upgraded at regular intervals, and mass emission standards, like particularly Bharat Stage 2, Bharat Stage 3, Bharat BS2, BS3, BS4, like that, have been upgraded at regular intervals. Okay, and these mass emission standards, particularly if you talk about BS2, which is no more applicable in any of the cities of India, actually, children, everybody is aware of. Okay, now we are entering into BS5. Okay, BS5, now BS4 also is only restricted to certain zones. Okay, so in this way, mass emission standards were also upgraded, and with these things, the air quality of Delhi has significantly improved. Okay, with time. Now coming to the next concept, what you have studied in this chapter is water pollution and its control. Okay, and water, one of the most important commodity for the survival of all organisms. Okay, and it does multiple functions. Okay, we believe that water can wash away everything, not taking cognizance of the fact that the water bodies are our lifeline actually. Okay, and but problem is, when you tend to use water, when you wash away things like, okay, sewage and all, when you dump it, indirectly you are contributing to various levels of water pollution. And what is water pollution? Is degradation of quality of water due to addition of unwanted substances, maybe organic or inorganic, ultimately making water unfit for human usage. Okay, so there are different activities, like as I said you, like dumping of sewage. Okay, particularly related to human activities. Okay, dumping of sewage in ponds, lakes, streams, ultimately these are becoming polluted day by day in several parts of the world. Okay, and water pollution can be natural, which is caused due to natural processes of soil erosion, addition of clay, silt, leaching, etc., and anthropogenic or man-made is mainly due to the human activities. The Indian government has passed the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act in the year 1974, particularly to safeguard the water bodies or water resources. Okay, domestic sewage and industrial effluent. What is this domestic sewage? Okay, so domestic sewage actually is nothing but a mere 0.1% impurities make the domestic sewage. Okay, make the domestic sewage unfit for human use. Okay, everything that goes into the trash, for example, that is considered the sewage which is coming out from our houses, our localities. Okay, our areas, those are all included under this. Okay, and there are different sewage treatment protocols which are followed in order to purify this. So as I said, you 0.1% impurities will make the sewage unfit. So what are those 0.1% impurities? They include suspended solids like sand, silt, clay, colloidal material can be there, dissolved impurities like will be there, like nutrients, etc. These are all contributing to pollution of the water bodies. So how we are going to treat this? Okay, for example, if I tell solids are relatively easier to remove, and very difficult thing to remove are nothing but the dissolved salts, particularly the nitrates, okay, phosphates, other nutrients, even some of the toxic metal ions, and even some organic compounds like pesticides and all are difficult to remove. And domestic sewage primarily contains biodegradable organic matter which readily decomposes by bacteria and other organisms. Now, to estimate the amount of biodegradable organic matter, or to know the level of pollution, there is a easy way to measure it. That is nothing but BOD, that is nothing but biochemical oxygen demand. Okay, so this biochemical oxygen demand is nothing but amount of oxygen required to convert all the organic substances into simpler forms in 1 liter of water with the activity of bacteria. This is called as biochemical oxygen demand. Okay, and biochemical oxygen demand will give you a measure to know the level of pollution in the water body, particularly the organic pollution in the water body. Okay, so this is very important. You have studied in other chapter also. And who are using this is microorganisms are involved in biodegradation of organic matter. Okay, they consume a lot of oxygen during this degradation, and as a result there is a sharp decline in DO which is downstream from the point of sewage. So this particular graph depicts the changes in the water bodies, effect of sewage discharge on some characteristics of water body like river. Okay, so you can see two parameters are shown here. Okay, one is the level of dissolved oxygen and another one is the level of BOD. Okay, at the point of sewage discharge, you can see that the DO level sharply declines here. Okay, due to the immediate discharge of sewage. Okay, dissolved oxygen content declines, whereas the BOD level increases here. Okay, demand increases, and as you move in this particular direction, that is the direction of the flow, you can see that DO levels can be restored and BOD value also will be found. Simultaneously, what you can notice is at the point of discharge, fish kill and disappearance of clean water organisms will be there. And when the things will be restored, then reappearance of clean water organisms can be noted. So this is about the VOD. Ultimately, water pollution, what is the major cause here? For example, if you take when sewage discharge occurs at a particular point, it mainly leads to mortality of fishes and other aquatic creatures. This is the same graph what I have said you. Okay. Now, and we have another concept that is nothing but the algal bloom. So what is this algal bloom, children? We are well aware of. When you talk about presence of large amount of nutrients in waters, they cause excessive growth of planktonic algae. Okay, that is free floating algae, and this excessive growth itself is called as algal bloom, and that imparts a distinct color to the water bodies. Okay, so you can see the picture clearly here. This is called as algal bloom. Okay, and there are many deleterious effects. That is, algal bloom causes deterioration of the water quality and ultimately leading to fish mortality. And even some bloom forming algae will be extremely toxic to human beings and animals. Okay, that is also one major drawback here. Okay, and there are some plants that is called as Vicornia, that is water hyacinth, what is commonly known as terror of Bengal. Okay, and this plant also leads, they grow abundantly in eutrophic water body, eutrophic rich in nutrients, and lead to an imbalance in the ecosystem dynamics of the water body. This is also a very important thing here. And Eichhornia is considered to be the world's most problematic aquatic weed. Okay, why? Because of its fast rate of multiplication, ultimately killing the aquatic animals. Okay, so this is one effect here. Okay, now when you come to effect of sewage, the sewage from our homes as well as from various sources like you take hospitals, etc., they contain undesirable pathogens also. That is also an important thing to be noted here. And its disposal into water without proper treatment can lead to outbreak of certain diseases like cholera, jaundice, typhoid, dysentery, etc., etc. And that is also one of the major drawbacks of water pollution. Okay, so now when you come to the next concept in water pollution, we have a concept that is called as biomagnification. Okay, now what is this biomagnification? Like a few toxic substances which are present in industrial wastewater can undergo biological magnification, okay, in the aquatic food chain. So what is biomagnification actually? Meaning of this thing is, it refers to the increase in the concentration of toxicant at successive trophic levels. Okay, and now what is the main reason for biomagnification, children? The main reason for this is the toxic substances which accumulate in a water body. Why does it accumulate? Because it cannot be metabolized in the system, and neither it can be excreted out of the body. So there are two major reasons for that. And what are those? I repeat. Okay, the first thing is these toxic substances will be accumulated because they cannot be metabolized, neither they can be excreted, and hence will be passed on to the next or the higher trophic level. They'll be moving on to the trophic level, and their concentration goes on increasing or building up. And this phenomenon is well known for many of the compounds, particularly mercury and DDT are mentioned in your syllabus. So if you see in this one, what do you say, the level also, if you see, okay, so water, one second, I'll just go back. So water, if you take DDT with an example, the concentration is 0.003 here. Okay, BBB, as you go on as you move on to the higher trophic level, the concentration ultimately builds up here. Okay, so and at the highest trophic level, the concentration can reach even 5 ppm also. Okay, so that is one thing here. That means it goes on increasing because it cannot be metabolized. Okay, so this concept is called as biomagnification. Okay, so the same things are shown here with the help of different diagrams. And what are the major ill effects of biomagnification? With respect to DDT disturbs calcium metabolism in birds and hence causes thinning of eggshells and their premature breaking, ultimately leading to decline in the bird population. Now, coming to the next concept under water pollution, that is nothing but the eutrophication. Okay, so what is eutrophication? Eutrophication is nothing but natural aging of a lake by nutrient enrichment, okay, of its water. And this eutrophication can be of two types, children. Okay, it can be of two types. One is called as the natural eutrophication, okay, and another one is called as the cultural or accelerated eutrophication. Okay, and natural eutrophication occurs, okay, naturally. It is a slow process, okay, it takes lot of time, okay. And how does it happen is, in a young lake, basically, if you take, the water will be cold and clear, which supports little life, and with time what happens, streams will drain into the lake, and that will be introducing multiple nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and ultimately encouraging the growth of aquatic organisms, okay. And hence fertility of the lake increases, life forms start to develop, and their organic remains begin to be deposited in the form of debris at the bottom of the lake. So over a great period of time, like over the centuries, the silt, organic debris will be piling up. Ultimately the lakes get shallower and shallower and even warmer, and with warm water, organisms will be taking over those that thrive in cold environment. In this way, life forms begin to develop, okay. And here what happens, ultimately, depending upon the climate, size of the lake, and other factors, natural aging may span thousands of years. As I said, it takes lot of time, it may take thousands of years. However, if you talk about the cultural or accelerated eutrophication, it takes a small time, very small time, even it can take 10 years, 20 years, only in decades, okay. And this is mainly due to the human activities or anthropogenic causes, okay. So these are the two major types of like eutrophication, and this eutrophication has got lot of ill effects. The one of the major effect is, okay, they overstimulate the growth of algae, causing ultimately unsightly scum, unpleasant odors, okay, and ultimately they deplete the water of dissolved oxygen, and hence leading to mortality of other organisms, okay. So these are the major problems which are associated with the eutrophication. Now you have another concept in this chapter, that is nothing but thermal pollution. So what is that is, the heated wastewaters which flow out of the electricity generating units like the power plants, etc., they also constitute one of the major categories. And these thermal wastewater eliminate or reduces the number of organisms which are sensitive to high temperature and may enhance the growth of plants or fish in extremely cold areas, actually, but after causing damage to the indigenous flora and fauna. So this is also one concept. If you just recall, we have studied one more case study here, that is integrated wastewater management. Okay, what is that? Integrated wastewater management includes sewage treatment, which can be done in an integrated manner by utilizing a mixture of different methods like artificial as well as the natural processes, okay. And this is done, an initiative was done in the town of Arcata, which is situated along the northern coast of California, actually, okay. And this work was done in collaboration with scientists or biologists from Humboldt State University, okay. And it was done in a integrated manner. And how actually was done, the cleaning will be occurring in two stages. That is, in the first stage, conventional sedimentation, filtration, and chlorine treatment will be given. Second stage, and at this stage, after this, what happens, dangerous pollutants like heavy metals also will remaining, okay, they will not be eliminated. So to combat this, the next step will be taken. And in the second step, what happens is, the biologists have developed a series of 6 connected marshes over a large area, that is around over 60 hectares of marshland, okay. And proper plants, living organisms like plants, algae, fungi are introduced into this area or seeded into this area, which will be, and as the water flows, these organisms neutralize, absorb, and assimilate the pollutants. And hence, as the water flows through these marshes, naturally it is getting purified. So this is one very interesting thing, a concept of integrated wastewater management. And the marshes will constitute a sanctuary, actually, okay. They, and it is a very good tourist spot also. And a citizens group which is called as FOAM, Friends of the Arcata Marsh, are responsible for safeguarding this wonderful project there, okay. So these are the things here related to water pollution. Now you have one more last thing under this heading, that is ecological sanitation. So what is ecological sanitation? It is a sustainable system for handling of human excreta using dry composting toilets. and this is a practical, hygienic, efficient and cost effective solution, you can say. Okay, only thing to be noted here is with this composting method, human excreta can be recycled into a resource which can be used as a natural fertilizer. Okay, and which reduces the need for chemical fertilizer. You can replace chemical fertilizer with natural fertilizer in the form of human excreta, dried human excreta. That is one approach. And presently there are working eco-sand toilets in many areas of like our own country, like Kerala, state of Kerala, and other things like Sri Lanka. Okay, other places like Sri Lanka. Now we have another thing here, that is nothing but solid waste. So solid waste, what are these refer to everything that goes out in a trash. Okay, and solid waste are the waste from homes, offices, stores, schools, hospitals, etc., that are collected and disposed of by the municipality. And these municipal solid waste generated comprise paper, food waste, plastic, metals, rubber, etc., etc. Okay, and how you are going to find a remedy for this is, when you talk about one remedy, burning is one, but burning is not an appropriate method. It reduces the volume of the waste, but only thing is it can also lead to a lot of air pollution. Okay, and often like open dumps also serve as a breeding ground for rats and flies. Okay, and when we talk about that solid waste, basically one method is very important here, that is usage of the sanitary landfills. Okay, so what are landfills? Landfills are a solution, since the amount of garbage generation, especially but when you talk about the metro cities, it has increased a lot, so much that nowadays landfilling sites are also getting used up or filled. Also in landfilling, there is one danger, that is danger of seepage. Okay, danger of seepage of substances or what do you say, chemicals from these landfills, which can ultimately pollute the underground water resources. That is also one thing here in the, and we have, when you go for landfilling, lot of care has to be taken to avoid the seepage into the underground water. Okay, that is also one important things. Okay, so and when you talk about the waste which are generated, can be categorized into three types: biodegradable, recyclable and non biodegradable. Okay, by the terminology only you can make out what is biodegradable, what is recyclable and what is non biodegradable. Under solid waste, one important category that comes into picture is hospitals, which generate lot of hazardous waste that contain disinfectants and other harmful chemicals, and more importantly pathogens. So such waste require lot of proper treatment and disposal. Okay, and use of incinerators basically is crucial for the disposal of hospital waste. Under solid waste, one more category comes into picture, that is the e-waste or the electronic waste. So what are e-waste? E-waste are nothing but they include irreparable computers, electronic goods, gadgets, laptops, all these things are included. And these are buried in landfills or incinerated basically. And in the present scenario, if you see, over half of the e-waste which are generated in the developed world are exported to the developing countries, mainly to China, India and all. And these, where in these countries metals like different metals like copper, iron, silicon, etc., will be recovered and used for recycling processes. Okay, one important thing is for e-waste is recycling is the only solution for the treatment, and but proper care is to be taken that it is done in an environment friendly manner. This is very very important. Okay, when you are handling the e-waste. So now we have a case study, that is a case study for the remedy of plastic waste. Very interesting. You have studied this in this particular chapter. How plastic waste can be managed to overcome the problem. So we know that plastic, one of the major pollutants, which is non-biodegradable, and there are a lot of countries who are taking care to avoid this kind of pollution by plastics, and laws, regulations have also been made. But a simple remedy to use this avoid this plastic waste was given by a plastic sack manufacturer belonging to the place of Bangalore. Okay, that is Ahmad Khan. Okay, he has been producing plastic sacks for many years, since many decades. Okay, and he ultimately realized that plastic waste was a real problem, because on a daily basis he used to collect tons of waste in the city of Bangalore. Okay, some nearly about 10-20 years back. So he could find a simple solution, that he prepared one thing that is called as poly blend. What is this poly blend? Poly blend is nothing but a fine powder of recycled modified plastic, okay, recycled modified plastic, which was developed by his company, okay. And this mixture is made with bitumen, okay. This modification was done by the usage of bitumen, which is actually used to lay roads actually. And the work was done in collaboration with RV College of Engineering and Bangalore City Corporation that time. And this person Ahmed Khan, he ultimately was succeeded in proving that blends of the poly blend and bitumen can be used to lay roads. And when they are used to lay roads, they enhance the bitumen's water repelling property ultimately, and help to increase the road life by a factor of 3. And actually, what is the basic raw material for creating polyblend is, it can be any kind of plastic film waste, okay. And now with this technology, Khan and Khan brothers are successful in constructing lot many roads in different areas of Bangalore, where you can see in this particular slide, okay, the roads which are made from plastic waste or asphalted using waste plastics, okay. And their company is called as KK Plastic Waste, that is Khan and Khan, which is a permanent solution to waste, okay. Under the collaboration with different RV College and Bangalore Mahanagara Palika, this was done in India in different places, particularly Bangalore, Mysore side, and even in some of the places in Karnataka like Raichur also, they have been successful to construct the roads. And nowadays they are even in collaboration with MNCs to go for this particular venture. So this is one of the best remedies. Now we have another thing like agrochemical and their effects, okay. So what is this agrochemical and their effects? We know about the green revolution, children. And what is green revolution? Green revolution has helped to increase the food supply by nearly about triple the food supply that time. And this was highly possible because of the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. And the usage of fertilizer and pesticides has increased manifold for increasing or enhancing crop production. These pesticides, herbicides, fungicides are even now they are being increasingly used, and ultimately they are also toxic to non-target organisms, which are important components of our ecosystem. So what is the thing here to be stressed is, when you go for addition of these increasing amounts of fertilizer or say pesticide, you are in other words harming the natural ecosystem or biodiversity. And the current problems in agriculture are extremely grave, because we can no more depend on this, because ultimately our ecosystem is getting imbalanced day by day. So in the wake of this, now one another case study we have to study here, okay, that is nothing but case study of organic farming. Okay, so what is this case study of organic farming? Very interested concept is told here. Integrated organic farming basically is a cyclical zero waste procedure, where waste products from one process are cycled in as nutrients for other processes. What is the meaning of this? That means waste collected from one technology is used as raw material for another technology, and this allows maximum utilization of natural resources, ultimately increasing the efficiency of production. One person is related to this, that is the farmer Ramesh Chandra Dagar, who is a farmer from Sonipat, Haryana. Actually, he was a person who included lot many processes in his integrated organic farming, like beekeeping, dairy management, okay, water harvesting, composting, agriculture, okay. These all things were included, vermiculture, all these things were included in his integrated methods, okay. And these methods were supporting each other, and in an integrated fashion they were allowing an extremely economical and sustainable venture. That is very important. And in his procedure, there was no need to use any kind of chemical fertilizers or for crops or even pesticides. And he used to use cattle dung basically as a manure. Crop waste was used to create compost, which can be used as a natural fertilizer, okay. And as I said you, the what do you say, from the biogas which is collected from using solid waste was actually used to feed his or supply electricity requirement in his field. So these are all integrated things. And he also was the person who actually created the Haryana Kisan Welfare Club. That is very important. Okay, he has created the Haryana Kisan Welfare Club with a membership of more than 5,000 farmers. And what is the motto of this Kisan Welfare Club is these people will be conducting hands-on training, creating seminars, awareness programs. That means what are the advancements made in the field of agriculture. Those all information will be given to the farmers belonging to the nearby states and nearby places. So this is one very good venture which was started by Ramesh Chandra Dagar. By this we can go for organic farming and avoid or bring in control our pollution problems. Now we have another thing here, that is nothing but radioactive waste. So these radioactive waste basically are major. There are many problems which were associated, okay, with the radioactive waste. Initially nuclear energy was actually considered to be a non-polluting for generating electricity and all, but ultimately it was realized that use of nuclear energy has two very serious inherent problems. One is, the first is accidental leakage, which has occurred in the 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl incidents. And the second one is disposal of radioactive waste, means how you are going to dispose of. That is very important. Okay, one is accidental leakage is a major problem. Second one is how you are going to dispose of. These are the two concerns related to this. Okay, and with respect to these radioactive waste, they are produced from various sources, children, like nuclear testing laboratories, minor leakage from nuclear power plants, waste from uranium mines, spillage from radioisotopes used in research medicine. Radioactive substances often have a long half-life. For example, strontium, if you take 28 years. So it has been recommended that storage of nuclear waste basically after sufficient pre-treatment, okay, should be done in suitably shielded containers which are buried within the rocks, okay, about 500-meter deep below the earth's surface. This is very important. This is one option available. Okay, this method of disposal is meeting some certain opposition, or in other words, this method is opposed by certain people because this is not 100% safe method, because what do you say, steepage can occur and it can contaminate the underground or groundwater resources. That is also one concern associated with this. Okay, now coming to the next concept here in this chapter, that is nothing but the greenhouse effect and the global warming. Okay, so what is greenhouse effect, children? Greenhouse effect is a naturally occurring phenomenon that is actually responsible for heating the earth's surface and atmosphere. Okay, so this greenhouse effect is very important, because without this effect, the average temperature of earth or the earth's surface would have been very very low, that is minus 18 degree Celsius. Okay, rather than the present one, which is 15 degrees Celsius. And how it happens basically, to understand this greenhouse effect, it is necessary to know the fate of energy actually that is falling on the earth's that is reaching the outer atmosphere. So you should know that clouds and gases reflect about 1/4 of the incoming solar radiation and they absorb some of it, but major or almost half of the incoming radiation will be falling on Earth's surface, which ultimately heats it, while a small proportion is reflected back. Okay, Earth's surface re-emits heat in the form of infrared radiation, but problem is part of this does not escape into the space, as some of the gases, particularly the greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane, absorb it. And these gases, after absorbing, radiate them in the form of heat energy, ultimately coming back to the Earth's surface and heating it up once again. So this is how the effect is occurring. Okay, and this cycle will be repeated multiple times basically, and there are major greenhouse gases who are actually responsible for this. And what are those in this, particularly this diagram depicts. Okay, so the major contribution is done by carbon dioxide, which contributes to 60%, then followed by methane contributing 20%, chlorofluorocarbons 14%, and nitrous oxide 6%. These are the major gases which actually contributes to the greenhouse effect phenomenon, and increase in the level of this greenhouse has led to a lot of undesirable effects on the Earth's surface. That is called a global warming, first of all. And what is this global warming? Increase in the annual temperature of Earth is called as global warming. During the past century, the temperature has increased to about 0.6 degrees Celsius, most of it particularly in the last 3 decades. And there is one more effect, okay, that is increase in the level of sea level. In other words, I can say that due to odd climatic conditions, basically multiple effects will be there. This is one of the effect is rise in the sea level, which can submerge many of the coastal areas. So that is one effect. Another effect is El Nino effect. Okay, what is this El Nino? Odd climatic conditions, that's called as El Nino effect, ultimately leading to increased melting of polar ice caps, and even particularly in places like Himalayan snow caps and all, melting of these regions leading to increase in sea level. As I said, those these are the drawback, what do you say, ill effects of global warming or greenhouse effect. And how are we are going to control this is, there are different measures which include cutting down of fossil fuel usage of fossil fuel, improving efficiency of energy usage, reducing deforestation, planting trees, and slowing down the growth of human population. So these are the some of the methods or initiatives that can be taken to prevent this. Now we have another concept here, that is the ozone depletion in the stratosphere. So one simple concept is there is good ozone and that is there is bad ozone. Okay, the bad ozone is one which is formed in the lower atmosphere, that is troposphere, which is harmful to the plants and animals. And good ozone is present in the stratosphere, that is upper part of the atmosphere, stratosphere, and it acts as a shield which basically absorbs the UV radiations from the sun. Okay, and these UV rays are highly harmful or injurious to living organisms, and they can be categorized actually like UVA, UVB, and UVC. Okay, so depending upon that, the level of injury differs also, children. Okay, and these UV rays are also known as mutagenic agents. They bring about different levels of mutation, and they are actually filtered by this ozone. And the thickness of ozone in a column of air, you can measure in terms of Dobson unit. There is a unit that is called as Dobson unit. Okay, and how this ozone formation occur. Ozone gas is continuously formed by the action of UV rays on molecular oxygen, children. Okay, molecular oxygen, and it is also degraded in the molecular degraded into molecular oxygen in the stratospheric region. Okay, and there is always a balance in the level of formation and in the level of degradation of ozone in the stratosphere. And if this balance is disrupted, then there will be an effect that is called as thinning of ozone layer. And this disruption in the balance is brought about by some ozone depleting substances basically. And those ozone depleting substances are, one of the major of them is chlorofluorocarbon, CFCs. And these CFCs, as we know, they find usage in refrigerators, air conditioners, jet planes, etc. These CFCs, which are discharged in the lower part of atmosphere, they move upward and reach stratosphere. In the stratosphere, they bring about certain chemical conversions. They release chlorine atom there. You can see in this particular reaction, chlorine atoms, and this chlorine acts as a catalyst which degrades ozone basically. Okay, it degrades ozone, okay, converting it into molecular oxygen. And these chlorine atoms, as I said you, because it is a catalyst, in multiple times, in a repeated fashion, this reaction is carried out. Okay, so in this way depletion occurs, and ozone depletion is occurring actually in the widely in the stratosphere, but depletion is marked over the Antarctic region, okay, majorly. And that has led to thinning or excessive thinning of ozone layer, and that is what we call as the ozone hole. Okay, that is very important, ozone hole. And there are different things here you have to remember with respect to the ozone depletion or UV radiation, which are reaching the earth's surface due to the ozone depletion. UV radiation of different wavelengths, particularly shorter than UVB, are almost completely absorbed by the earth's surface, okay, or by the earth's atmosphere, given that ozone layer is intact basically. Okay, and UVB is mainly known to damage the cornea. I repeat my words, UVB is mainly known to damage the cornea. Okay, damages DNA, brings about mutation, causes aging of the skin basically. Okay, damage to the skin cells, leading to various types of skin cancers, and ultimately, as I said, cornea is one which absorbs UVB radiation, and a high dose of UVB will cause inflammation of cornea, leading to snow, blindness, cataract, etc. And such exposure may permanently damage the cornea also. So, after recognizing the harmful effects of ozone depletion, an international treaty known as the Montreal Protocol was signed at Montreal, Canada, particularly in the year 1987, brought into effect in 1989 actually, to control the emission of ozone depleting substances. Okay, and after that many more efforts also were made, and different protocols were also brought into action. They were laid down separately for developed countries and developing countries for reducing the emission of CSC and other ozone depleting chemicals. So this is related to ozone depletion. Now we have the last thing here, that is degradation by improper resource utilization and maintenance, children. In that, one important concept is soil erosion and desertification. So we all know what is soil erosion, actually washing away of the top layer of the soil. Okay, and ultimately deteriorating or destroying the quality of water in the nearby water bodies. Okay, development of fertile topsoil actually will take centuries, but removal of it is very easy due to human activities like over cultivation, unrestricted grazing, okay, deforestation, poor irrigation proper practices, ultimately resulting in arid patches and ultimately leading to desertification. Okay, and water logging is also a problem here. Irrigation, when you go for irrigation without any proper drainage of water, okay, that leads to waterlogging in the soil. And waterlogging not only affects the crops, beside affecting the crops, it draws salts to the surface of the soil. That is very, very deleterious effect, and this salt then is deposited in the form of a thin crust on the surface of the land actually. Okay, and that leads to extremely damaging to the agriculture sector. And waterlogging and soil salinity are major problems that have mainly come in the wake of green revolution. Now the last part, that is deforestation. So what is deforestation? You know, it is the conversion of forested area to non-forested ones actually. Okay, and according to an estimate, almost 40% forests have been lost in the tropics, children, compared to only 1% in the temperate region, because you know tropical regions are extremely good for human activities. That is one of the reasons. The present scenario of deforestation is particularly grim in India, particularly, which is one of the tropical countries. At the beginning of 20th century, forests covered only 30% basically of land. By the end of century, it has been shrunk to 19.4% only. And the National Forest Policy of India has recommended 33% forest cover for the plains and 67% for the hills actually. These are the actual guidelines. Okay, and now how you are going to control the deforestation and what are the reasons for deforestation? There are many reasons. Okay, the conversion of forest to agricultural land is one of the reasons. Trees are axed for multiple source purposes like timber, firewood, cattle ranching, for several other purposes. Okay, urbanization is one of the reasons. Mining activity is also one of the important reasons. And another very important is slash and burn agriculture, also called as the jhum cultivation, which was majorly practiced in northeastern states of India. Okay, and in this process, what happens is the farmers will be cutting down the trees of the forest and burn the plant remains. They burn it, and after that, the ash is used as a fertilizer, and the land is used then for farming or cattle grazing actually. And after cultivation, the area will be left for many years. Okay, and it is left for its own natural recovery actually. So in this way, jhum cultivation is carried out. But in earlier days, when it was prevailing, there was actually time gap. Okay, between the land, enough of time gap was given for the land recovery. But now, with increasing population, this is not possible, and ultimately it leads to deforestation. Okay, so to overcome this, we should go for one more concept, that is nothing but the reforestation actually. And there are deleterious effects of or consequences of deforestation, like increasing CO2 level in the atmosphere, leading to global warming. Deforestation also causes loss of biodiversity due to habitat destruction, disturbs hydrologic cycle, decrease in the rainfall, causing soil erosion, and may even lead to desertification in extreme cases. So now we should go for reforestation as an approach to overcome this problem. Okay, and we have a case study of people's participation in conservation of forest, which you have studied. Okay, related to the king of Jodhpur in 1731. This case study dates back to, and this case study is related to a brave lady, that is Amrita Devi, who showed great courage by hugging a tree and preventing the king's men to cut down the tree, as we all know. And in her honor, the government of India has instituted Amrita Devi Bishnoi Wildlife Protection Award. Okay, you also must be knowing that. And similarly, we have a Chipko movement. Okay, Chipko movement, which of Gadwal Himalayas, which was initiated in 1974. Okay, and there also local women participated. They shows lot of bravery. They showed lot of what do you say, encouragement was shown by the women in order to prevent this deforestation. Okay, people all over the world also have acclaimed this Chipko movement. And after realizing the significance of participation by local communities, the government of India in 1980 has introduced the concept of joint forest management. Okay, so what is this? Is in this, the local people will be allowed to work in collaboration with the government. Okay, and in return for their cooperation, they will be given certain services from the forest, like communities will be getting benefit of forest products like fruits, gums, rubbers, etc., etc. So this is about the case study related to people's participation in conservation of forest. Okay, and Sundarlal Bahuguna was the person who was the main person behind the Chipko movement, which was initiated in 1974. So students, with this we have a glance, we have just seen a glance of the topic environmental issues. Thank you.